Alright, alright. So this is a huge departure in tone from what I usually do on this channel. But for those of you who've actually been paying attention these last couple of weeks, I changed my name to Planet Sabbath. From now on, like I said, this will mostly be random content, but the channel will be heavily music oriented, mainly focusing on rock and metal specifically. So I thought, why don't we just hit the ground running with a huge video? Specifically, an album ranking. And I figured even though this channel's name is Planet Sabbath, I figured we should start off with the Led Zeppelin ranking, because two reasons. One, I'm actually not done listening to all of Black Sabbath's later albums yet. Future Josh here. I actually have listened to all of Black Sabbath's albums. That recording was from before I finished, but yeah. As for when that ranking is going to happen, I don't know, but I just thought I'd have to add this segment in here as of this video. Two, Black Sabbath has way more albums than Led Zeppelin, and I didn't want to start off with too huge a video, if you know what I mean, because Led Zeppelin only has 9 albums, so like, it's going to be kind of a long video, but not too long. Black Sabbath has 19 albums, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a long one. I might get to that eventually, but yeah. Anyway, so here we go. Now, keep in mind these are just my opinions, not objective fact, and if you disagree with me, feel free to drop your opinions in the comments. Hell, even drop your ranking of Zepp's albums in the comments, because I want to hear what you guys have to say. Also, keep in mind, I'm not a music critic. I mean, I play instruments and stuff, I play guitar and bass, but I'm not really like well versed in music theory. I'm not here to evaluate and analyze every damn song. I'm just ranking these albums purely based off my enjoyment of them. Anyway, here we go. Look, another thing I want to say before I get going on this one is that none of these albums are bad at all. But I think most of everyone can agree that Coda is Led Zeppelin's weakest album. Most people will tell you that it's unfocused and or lacks direction. Now, I'm not going to say that personally, because while it definitely is unfocused, it was kind of meant to be that way from the beginning. The only reason it was even made in the first place was because Led Zeppelin were still signed to Swan Song for one more album after John Bonham died, and they were like, oh crap, Bonzo's dead, we still gotta do one more album. We can't record any new songs without him because he was too good a drummer. Oh, I know, why don't we just gather all our unreleased songs, compile them into an album, and then call it good. And that's exactly what happened. Look, it's not a bad album, and some of the stuff on there is actually kind of good. But there's only one song on this album I really like, it's We're Gonna Groove. The rest of the stuff, honestly, I can just skip and just not feel like I missed anything. I can only remember what about half the songs of this album actually sound like anyways. Everything else is just a blur. And I think that just about sums this album up perfectly. You know, of course it lacks direction, and of course it was gonna be that way. But at the end of the day, it's just like a lot of the songs on here are just forgettable, man. Anyway, it's not a bad album. There's some good stuff on here. But as a closer to Zeppelin's career, I don't think this was the best way to go about it. But they did what they could anyway, so it's not like there would have been anything different. Okay, sorry if I keep messing around with the lighting in this video. This video is kind of an experimental one for me, because, like, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what works, honestly. But okay. Number 8, Sent Through the Outdoor. Look, it's not like I don't like this album or anything. I appreciate it for what it is. But Led Zeppelin's last studio album, yes, because Coda's not a studio album, it's compilation. Led Zeppelin's last studio album had a pretty rough production. Jimmy Page and John Bonham spiraled into substance and alcohol abuse. And as that happened, the other 2 members of the band had to figure out what the hell even do at this point. But that's why this album really gave John Paul Jones a lot of time to shine, especially on the keyboard, which I do appreciate because he's probably the most underrated member of the band. Seriously, super unappreciated. He has so many iconic bass lines, especially the one from Ramble On. man, that bass line slaps, and it slaps hard. But also, it gives him more time to shine on the synth too, which he's very talented at. And the album in general is just a huge departure in tone from the rest of Zeppelin's career, with it easily being honestly their most ambitious album to date. The album straight up gave us an almost country song with Hot Dog, and a long synth ballad in the form of Carousel Amra. Again, just like Coda, most of the stuff on here I would skip, but there is one song on here I really like. That is the album's closer, I'm Gonna Crawl. Well, okay, there's All My Love, of course, but honestly, I'm Gonna Crawl is the best song in this album. And considering this is Led Zeppelin's last studio album, that song serves as an epic closer and send out to their career. So, I like this album. I do. But man, I just can't rank it that high because there's so much else in their discography that's just better, honestly. Trust me, if this album was just from Robert Plant and not Led Zeppelin, I'd probably appreciate it a lot more. But as a Zeppelin album, well, not bad. It is definitely not as strong as the stuff that they achieved during their prime. But hey, I guess you could say this album was a kickstart to Robert Plant's more pop-oriented solo career, so hey, at least something good came out of it. If In Through the Outdoor gave Robert Plant and John Paul Jones a spotlight, then Presence was Jimmy Page's and John Bonham's album, for sure. The album stayed very true to their bluesy roots, again, such a solid album, and it mixed some other genres in there too. Like, this album is honestly home to one of the most underrated Led Zeppelin songs, Candy Store Rock. Holy crap, that song is a jam. It honestly reminds me of like rockabilly / 50s rock and roll, which, man, Led Zeppelin pulled that off so well. Anyway, a lot of the other stuff on here is pretty good too, but then the album gave us the epic 10-minute long Achilles' Last Stand. Well, Led Zeppelin has definitely had their fair share of ballads up to this point. This is one that, man, just takes you on the journey, like kind of like Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner by Iron Maiden. Just takes you on a journey about like ancient Greek hero. And usually plus any fantasy related Zepp track is just epic. I mean, other than those two songs, I actually just don't have much to say about this album in general. I mean, because I enjoyed it. It is a very solid album, but it's not one that I see myself really going back to listen to all the time. But, again, it's a solid album that you definitely must not skip. Okay, look, before we move on, almost all the next 6 spots on this list are completely interchangeable because, man, Led Zeppelin's first 6 albums are all just straight up masterpieces and are some of the best work to like ever grace music. Like, I can only name a few other bands who have done this. If I made this list just a few months ago, I probably would have put this album in the number 2 spot or something. And it's not like my taste on this album is sour or anything, not at all. But I've just kind of really come to appreciate their other albums even more, which kind of unfortunately puts this album lower on the list. This is definitely the most blues-influenced Zepp album, with literally 4 blues covers on the album, out of a total of 9 songs. That means that almost half the album is just blues covers. Oh, and side note, the covers are Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You, You Shook Me, Dazed and Confused, and I Can't Quit You, Baby. Either way, covers or not, the songs in this album all make a killer opening to Zepp's career. Black Mountainside is a nice teaser to Zeppelin's softer, more acoustic side, which shows up especially on 3, which I'll be covering pretty soon. Your Time Is Gonna Come is one of their most darkest songs. Trust me, you look at the lyrics, you'll be shocked. And Communication Breakdown is a fun jam. But, so while this isn't Zeppelin's greatest album, it was an absolute killer opening to their career. And hey, fun fact, some brief history, this album and Led Zeppelin as a group were incredibly hyped up, and people had high expectations for the group before anyone even heard a note of their music. Mostly because this was a result of the Atlantic Records' incredible marketing of the band, but at the time, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones were well-respected session musicians, and Jimmy Page was already known for being a bassist in the Yardbirds for a brief time before Led Zeppelin. So expectations were high right from the start, and Zeppelin absolutely delivered. Okay, I'm going to get flack for this one. I'm going to get flack for putting 4 lower on the list. Don't get me wrong, I love this album too. And I wouldn't even say this album's overrated, because honestly the word overrated is overrated at this point. Like, it is very overused. And the word overrated would suggest the hype around this album isn't justified. It's justified very much. But personally, the next 4 albums on the list are ones I'm more likely to revisit than this one. Look, I like Stairway too, but it's just there's so much from Zeppelin's discography that's just as good, if not better than Stairway. But even though I put this album lower on the list, like I said, every single song from this album I thoroughly enjoy. Black Dog is a classic, of course, iconic riff. Rock and Roll always puts me in a good mood and gets me going. Man, that is an incredible song. Misty Mountain Hop and Battle of Evermore are my 2 favorite songs from this album. Misty Mountain Hop is just a jam, got some memorable riffs. And Battle of Evermore is just, again, another one of those epic ones like Achilles' Last Stand. Just takes you on a journey. And yeah, they're both among the most epic Zeppelin songs ever. And they're both Lord of the Rings inspired. And as a huge Lord of the Rings fan, the fact that they made these also when only the books were around, because this was even before the Ralph Bakshi animated adaptations of those films even existed. Because The Hobbit film came out in 1977. This is in 1971. Only the books were around. You had to know this stuff from the book. That is just impressive. Anyway, Going to California is a pretty epic acoustic journey, and of course, When the Levee Breaks as the album's closer is an absolute jam. And so is Four Sticks too, can't forget that one. So as someone who's heard the original version of When the Levee Breaks, I still prefer Zepp's rendition. So, look, as great as this album is, as iconic in rock history as this album is, because you can't deny this is one of the most iconic albums in rock history, I just put it lower on the list because, one, I appreciate the next 4 albums that I'm about to talk about a lot more, especially the next one on this list. The next entry, seriously, is an album that I've come to appreciate so much more than I would have like just a couple months ago. So, look, as great as this album is, I also put it low on the list because it's just not one I see myself always coming back to. Like, I'll always be coming back to like Houses of the Holy or Physical Graffiti, and like 2, and you'll see where those albums are on the list next. But this one, while I'll occasionally revisit it and listen to some of the songs from it, like, it's just not one I see myself totally just coming back to. But either way, great album. It's just I appreciate these next 4 albums even more than this one. Okay, funnily enough, this album was actually seen as a disappointment when it was released. People came to this album expecting another Whole Lot of Love, and they just didn't find it. Like, okay, the album gave us Immigrant Song, but other than that, On the Tiles, pretty much the entire album is purely acoustic. Jimmy Page was known for having a fascination with Old English folk music, so after the full-on just assault of Led Zeppelin 2 and their first album too, because once Led Zeppelin 2 was recorded, they were on their huge 1969 tour, and they just wanted to take a break, and so they retired to a cabin in the woods to record this one, and they wanted to just kind of take a step back and just make this album mostly acoustic. And like I said, Jimmy Page had a fascination with English folk music, so yeah, him and the rest of the band, they decided to just take a step back, make a more chill album, and make it mostly acoustic. But maybe that's just what makes the album so great. Personally, I find it as a super chill album that I'll always just find myself like thrown on in the background. Hell, I even listened to it while writing this video. My favorite songs on 3 are probably Friends and Gallows Bull. Just incredible masterpieces of songs, seriously. Zeppelin's songwriting is almost just like no other, and those are 2 just incredibly beautiful tracks. But man, again, just the entirety of the album. As I keep saying, it's a straight up masterpiece from start to finish. I honestly can't think of anything more to say though about this one, other than the fact it's one of the most underappreciated Zeppelin albums. And if you asked me a few months ago where I would have put this, I probably would have put it way lower in the list. But after giving it a few more listens, man, I have just come to appreciate this one so much more. It is easily one of the most underappreciated Zeppelin albums, and it definitely deserves more credit than it gets. But of course, most people just remember this album as the one that Immigrant Song's on, because yeah, of course. Most Zeppelin fans will rank this album higher in their list, and I can totally see why. Look, Led Zeppelin 1 may have shocked the parents of the time, but 2 took that album, cranked everything all the way up to 11, even past 11. And what's funny is that this album was literally only recorded in just such a small amount of time, as was Paranoid by Black Sabbath. This was, I think, recorded in just a total of 30 hours. But yet, it is probably the most cohesive album out of Zeppelin's entire discography, as was Paranoid by Black Sabbath. Just, again, this one and Paranoid, 2 legendary albums. Plus, this was not only this was the only time that they released more than one album in a single year, but again, like I've said before, they were on their 1969 World Tour at the time, so the crackdown was immense, and they used any spare time they had to record this album. Man, somehow they managed to churn out a damn near perfect album under all that pressure. I mean, of course, we got a whole lot of love, but honestly, my favorite song on this album is What Is and What Should Never Be, which kind of likes to alternate between Zepp's softer acoustic side and a lot of their heavier elements too. We of course got the Lord of the Rings inspired Ramble On, along with Heartbreaker, which is one of the most iconic riffs in rock history. And the Lemon song is, of course, part of the 2% of the Zeppelin songs about citrus, the other being Tangerine from 3, which, again, another great song. Although, to be fair, the Lemon song isn't actually about lemons. It's about something else that is probably not safe to talk about on YouTube, and I generally kind of like to keep this channel at least a little family friendly, so yeah, I'd rather not say what it's actually about. Livin' Lovin' Made is short, but an absolute jam, and overall, this album, easily the best of their self-titled days. If Led Zeppelin, let's say they just ended their career right after this album, if that happened, they would still go down as one of the most important bands in the history of rock, purely based on these 2 albums alone. But of course, there are still 2 albums that top this one. Those next 2 albums are among the best albums in rock and music history. So, here we go. Number 2. As Led Zeppelin's first and only double LP, Physical Graffiti, much unlike 2, was recorded over a span of 8 months, which ended up with way more content that they could actually fit on a single record. Band members didn't want to cut anything, so what came out was Zeppelin's longest album, Physical Graffiti, with a total of 15 tracks, some of which are outtakes from previous albums. So while not every song on this album is the greatest song ever, man, the great stuff on here is literally some of Zeppelin's best work. Okay, The Rover, immense deep cut. On this album, that song is on this album. Personally, it is one of my favorite Zeppelin songs because it's such a fun song to listen to. It brings back good memories for me. And Page's solo on this one is pretty damn epic too, and it has a pretty memorable riff. Custard Pie is a perfect, heavy opening to the album as well, and then The Rover leads right into In My Time of Dying. Oh man, this is the song that stretches past 11 minutes. It is Zepp's longest song to this day. This album was also probably Zepp's most experimental one yet, maybe other than Into the Outdoor, as the longer format basically allowed them to mess around more with different styles of music, and include stuff that was originally going to be on the earlier albums, but was ultimately not included. It's like why the song Houses of the Holy is on this album instead, because they probably didn't have room for it on the album that it was intended to be on. Either way though, that song is a jam, and Trampled Underfoot is as well, bordering on almost the line of a funk waltz, which is interesting. Sick Again is a pretty good closer for the album, and 10 Years Gone is quite epic. Yeah, just amazing. Just an amazing song. And, okay, I can't beat around the bush any longer. You all know the one song from this album. The most well-known song from this album is the epic, mind-bending Kashmir. This is Led Zeppelin's best song. I don't care. It's not even my favorite Led Zeppelin song, but it is their best one. Hell, even Robert Plant said once in an interview that he wishes that Zepp were honestly more remembered for Kashmir than Stairway. I can't even agree with him more. Of course, this album contains some fun outtakes like Black Country Woman and Boogie with Stew, so while they're not Zepp's best work per se, they're still kind of fun to listen to and just have in the background. Oh, and Boogie with Stew is actually a blues cover and actually included Rolling Stones keyboardist Ian Stewart, so they had a collab on the album too, I think, which was their only one, which was nice. Overall, while some of the stuff on this album isn't Zeppelin's best work, man, the great stuff on this album are some of the best songs to exist ever. But of course, this album was only outmatched by one other. The one album to rule them all. Yeah, I'm sorry, I had to make a Lord of the Rings reference in this video. I mean, come on. Zeppelin's already made like at least 3 Lord of the Rings songs. You have to have a Lord of the Rings reference in this video. Anyway, number 1. Was any other album even close? Physical Graffiti maybe, but half that album is just outtakes. Houses the Holy, meanwhile, is a masterpiece from start to finish. Okay, maybe the cover art is kinda weird, but if you ignore that, every single song on here is an absolute timeless banger. The song remains the same. Fantastic opening to the album, opting for a very dense and heavy guitar sound before Zepp decides to slow things down with the Rain song, which, like a lot of 3, is a super chill song to have on in the background. And it's honestly, it's on my playlist of like lo-fi songs where I can just fall asleep to. Yeah, and this song is just amazing. Then, of course, the best known song from the album, Over the Hills and Far Away, opts to start off slow, but then speeds up towards the end with a pretty memorable riff. And then we get this straight up James Brown tribute, The Crunch. And then we get back to Zepp's signature sound with Dancing Days, which is a fun and just memorable song that really gets me going. Damaka is Zeppelin's one and only attempt at reggae. I have to say, as someone who's listened to reggae before, yeah, it sounds pretty damn good. And just like the Rain song, No Quarter is a chill song, and it gives John Paul Jones a spotlight with its very Mellotron heavy sound. And again, just super chill song. Even when the guitar kicks in, it's just nice and chill. Kind of a lo-fi beat you can kind of have on in the background. And it's fitting that we've saved the best for last. My favorite Zeppelin song, The Ocean, is an amazing closer to the album, just a fun time to listen to, and I could listen to the album 100 times on repeat. Well, I meant the song, but the entire album, yeah, sure. I can listen to this song and the entire album just 100 times on repeat, and it will never get old. This album is literally one of the greatest albums of all time. Like, top 5 for sure, for me. And I honestly don't know what else to say. Other than this album is the greatest Zeppelin album of all time. And yeah, yes, it is better than 4. Come at me. Well, there you go. That's my official ranking of all 9 albums by Led Zeppelin. Oh, and by the way, sorry if the lighting keeps changing. I'm recording this at different times of day. But basically, here's my lighting situation. So I have this little just desk lamp right here. You can see there's no really other settings to it. I just use this. And then I have this as well. This like ring light that a lot of Instagrammers and TikTokers use and stuff. I say Instagrammers, no one says that, no. But yeah, a lot of Instagram influencers and TikTokers use. This one has a couple light settings. You can change it. I have this kind of warm yellow, which is what I was using throughout most of this video because I want to just try out different things and stuff. And then this less warm but still kind of warm white, and then this like super like kind of cool white. This is what I use most of the time. Anyway, so anyway, let me know your ranking of Led Zeppelin albums in the comments because I want to hear what you guys have to say. Also, let me know what you think of my lighting situation in the comments, if I should change anything. Those are the 2 lights I use that I just showed you. Anyway, But yeah, mainly let me know your ranking of all Led Zeppelin albums in the comments. Go ahead, tell me how I'm wrong, whatever. It only helps me because interactions and stuff, and that's just how the YouTube algorithm works. Also, I do have an Instagram account, so if you want to give me a follow, I am Planet Sabbath 66. You can see my account on the screen. I just post random memes on there, but I also post some videos of me playing guitar. You know, some of the older ones may not sound the greatest, but hey, tell me what you think. Also, give this video a share. I never ask for that on this channel, but I want my videos to reach a wider audience. So share this video with your friends if you can, or if you want to. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed my first kind of longer video under my new moniker. Expect more content like this from now on, and I'll catch y'all later.